With the release of the Clash 1.3 update, we were introduced to the managers, a wonderful cast of bosses we would grow to love. Though with how unique their battles were compared to one another, it was natural some would need tweaking later down the line. Eventually, we got the summer update, which hinted at rebalancing some of these bosses. Some of these were very simple changes of just number tweaking, but Major Player is one I'd argue got the biggest and most controversial rebalance. I'm going to be talking about what the fight was before its rework and how it is now. Also, there will be spoilers for this boss, so if you've not been spoiled yet and would like to experience this fight blind, which I would highly recommend, you should click off now. Major Player is the Kudos boss in Mezzo Melodyland. This being the 5th playground would place his difficulty in a mid-game spot, but most people would agree he was one of the easiest Kudo manager fights, so I will go over all of the cheats in this fight and how they were dealt with prior to 1.4 update. For phase 1, he starts off alone, but after attacking him, he will show off his first cheat, Dance Partners. This is very simple to understand. Cards will be summoned onto the stage and will be assigned a partner with a tune via a shape label on the status effect. Cards and tunes will deal bonus damage if attacking the partner, but if they decide to attack someone else that isn't their partner, the damage will be reduced significantly. The cards have no other buffs than a damage boost, so the sheet will usually be handled by tunes trapping or throwing their partner and a lure. Then the person who lured would clean up their partner the prior turn. Due to these cards not having manager benefits, tunes may also quadruple fire, though this is usually a time save as the dance partners aren't too dangerous. After they are gone, the focus shifts back to Major Player. Now we are introduced to a second cheat, Star of the Show. After dance partners, he will now begin summoning rising stars one at a time, usually every other turn. These cards have a significant health boost and have growing damage each turn, along with immunities to being fired. Even with the growing damage boost, they aren't too dangerous. Teams would usually deal with them by sorting and zapping them beside Dave before more racing cards can stack up, or people will lure and ignore them, focusing purely on Dave since they don't pose much of a threat. Next, once Major Player falls below 60% health, 2,963 to be exact, his third cheat will play out. This is the rhythm minigame cheat. You might be familiar with the trolley game and it plays exactly the same, you just repeat the arrows on the screen. The better you do, the less damage you take. The strategy for this is just not to be scrolling Twitter or tabbed out when this happens. You can also watch your friends and copy off them if you have to. He does this dance once again once hitting below 33%, but plays out the exact same with no changes. By the time you have finished the second rhythm mini-game, Major Player should be very low, and then he's defeated and Toontown is saved. Well, of course, you know that's not the real story. This is only the halfway point. Now it's time to begin phase 2. Major Player comes back to 3 Hollywoods alongside him, starting the real battle. This is basically just phase 1 but with some higher numbers, testing to see what you learned before in the first phase. Repeating the dance partner cheat from the first phase, these Hollywoods will be assigned a partner and the buff a superstar, but this is just a stronger variant of Rising Star, and not much to note. Since these are only 3 Hollywoods, Dave will also be given a partner. If prepared, you should have brought in match traps as TNTs will be your best friend in this part. People partnered with Hollywoods would trap them and a person partnered with Major Player would lure. These won't one-shot the Hollywoods, but if someone brought a short Clara IU, it can one-shot them. Once they are weakened by the TNT, a lower trap or zapping would clean up the last of the Hollywoods. Also to note, Dave activates a cheat for all of phase 2 called Last Tap. He does plus 5 damage initially and gains plus 1 every round. Not much to note though, this is basically just a hurry up feature if you're taking too long. Once the Hollywoods have been defeated, the fight is basically over. No more dance partners will spawn and Dave will resort to summoning Rising Stars again, but due to them not being a threat as mentioned before, most teams will just learn and ignore them and keep targeting Dave. Don't let your guard down though, because the Major Player has one last trick up his sleeve. Once falling below half health, which is 2,222, he will initiate the rhythm minigame for phase 1. But it's way more difficult this time, and the last pattern is basically impossible to do perfectly, unless you're using a notepad or a macro. Since it's impossible to perfect this minigame, it's basically damage you have to be prepared to take. Some players will take note of this and use a group tune-up in advance, since Major Player goes first. It's usually 32 damage consistently, so for below that you may need to unite. Even though it's impossible to avoid damage here, don't get caught lacking, as not inputting anything for the entire minigame will cause Dave to do a measly 9,999 damage one-shotting you instantly. Personally, I would recommend avoiding this if possible, because it's just a tiny bit deadly. Once this is over, keep focusing and you'll have won. Now you can receive your rightful reward of having Dave caress your face. While the way I may have explained this battle makes it sound complicated, this fight is very simple in practice. There's not many RNG elements in this fight other than misses, of course. Now I can go over how the cheats are changed in the rework. I will now be going over many of the changes made to his fight and how it changed the strategy to the best I can. Trust me, it gets a little complicated and harder to explain now. First off, dance partners were given a massive buff. Now on with their current stats, they are now given random cheats, which are a lot to go over, but I'll explain one by one. The first is lure resistance. This is pretty self-explanatory. They are completely resistant to lure. This means trapping them will no longer work, along with throw combos. I would recommend a stun and drop to deal with these cards. Moving on, we have soak resistance. This card will take 60% less damage when soaked. Now let me reiterate this more, as the description alone confuses people. When the game says 60% less damage when soaked, it does not mean they are resistant to only soak. Once hit with the soaked debuff, every gag from now on will deal 60% until they are dried off. In simple terms, if you accidentally soak this card, they are basically invincible until it wears off. You can zap them to get rid of the effect, but soaking this card in the first place is essentially a death sentence with how much turns it puts you behind. Next up is damage reduction, another simple one thankfully. This card just takes negative 50 less damage to any gag. After this, we have focus defense. This card takes 50% less damage from the first gag that hits it. This also counts splash. It's heavily recommended to mark or trap them before drop to get the most damage out. For the last one we have, it's Siphon. This card deals 50% less damage, which sounds pretty good, but in return, when it deals damage, it will heal for 4 times the damage dealt. Thankfully, it can't overcharge. Yeah, that was a lot to go over for the first buff. Now I can't explain one-to-one how to deal with these dance partners as a group since there's so many combinations, but you'll just have to figure out how to deal with them individually with the ways I've described. What I can say, trapping and luring, all of them is no longer gonna work. I've seen it's common to now just fire all 4 of them now, but if that isn't an option, you're just gonna have to work around it. Now for the biggest surprise, this rebalance added a whole new cheat for the major player. This is the only rework to do so out of all of the managers, and that's why I think it's so interesting to talk about this rebalance in particular. Because I actually like this cheat a lot, say able to guess first. Every other turn, major player will step back and let a rising star go off, giving them a significant damage boost for this turn and alluring them if necessary. Toons hit by this card's attack will be given a stat called Viral Sensation. To put this in simple terms, the Toon's attack will be increased, but their accuracy will go down to compensate. This is manageable on its own, but when combined with the buff coming up, it could be fatal. Rising Stars. Remember when I said they're most harmless and were mostly ignored on the fight's old version? Well, now their attack increase return has been increased significantly, they will now need to be taken out quick or it's going to be trouble. And combined with Guessers, these ordinary cards will do upwards of 60 through 70 damage if unchecked. This is only if you let it get bad though, as fresh Rising Stars will only do around 30. Still, this is absolutely devastating and will catch you off guard if you aren't looking out for it. The only good thing that comes from this is defeating these Rising Stars will grant all Toons a plus 15 damage boost throughout phase 1. So as soon as you defeat more, you'll be able to take out Dave quicker than before. But also note, you can do this with dance partners present. And if you remember, they deal bonus damage to the Toon they are partnered with. So if they combo this, it can get deadly quick. That's everything changed with phase 1. The rhythm minigames have gone untouched, I'm fairly certain. Now we can move on to the phase 2 changes. Remember the 3 Hollywoods? Well, they all have been given a significant change. Now they can have all of the buffs I explained previously. Siphon, lure resistance, focus defense, you get the picture. But this buff cycles every round. So Hollywood with Siphon can swap to lure resistance in a turn. This means trapping them will no longer be a consistent strategy and you'll have to figure out other methods to defeat them. I can't explain a way to win this all due to the combination cycling every round, so you'll have to work with them individually. Other than that, phase 2 runs just about the same except you defeat Rising Stars for the damage buff. That was a lot to go over, but that's all the major player changes. Love or hate it, I'm pretty sure this is how it's going to stay for the future. I've seen many agree it's too hard, too RNG dependent and overwhelming. But I have also seen people liking the new challenge it brings, and how the RNG in this version brings more replayability to the battle. These changes also make it way less trap heavy, but if you experienced the fight, what do you think? Do you think it's too hard, complicated, or do you appreciate the new difficulty and strategy introduced? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching, as this is one of my first videos. I hope I was able to help you learn something new. I wanted to see if people would be interested in this type of content. So until next time, see y'all. If I ever make another video, that is.